penned stories in The Sun. They are simply packaged differently. The sea of worry is something that was more one-dimensional during the Cold War. Our managerial masters sorely miss that simple dynamic and have spent every day since the fall of the Berlin Wall trying to invent enemies as compelling as the evil empire. I have come to realize, as many have, that even at the height of the Cold War, the chances of a real hot nuclear conflict were remote. And from the late 1960s onwards, the Soviets internally acted upon this reality. They ramped up abortion, no longer fearing a land war, because they saw sheer human mass, by that point, as an administrative headache and not a waiting army for World War III. By the early 1970s, the USSR and USA saw their mutual nuclear arsenals as financial headaches more than anything else, resulting in the two SALT treaties for nuclear reduction. The nukes were never going to fly, but the fear they might was very useful. The Cold War was largely a domestic, not geopolitical project. It allowed them to control their domestic populations with an unlimited remit. People who lived through those years will tell you that fear of the bomb was the mental background noise to many people's lives, especially certain types of concerned young people. It always existed within their psyche, trotted out and enhanced whenever needed. Cold War fear of all-out nuclear conflict being almost laughable is still a very controversial opinion, but I think it's the only historically literate one. We find ourselves today with a version of the bomb tailored for the increasingly fractured cultural and political niches that make up the dissolving societies we call the West. The children of the news cycle are unified in their fear, but not always in what they fear. They exist in an overarching fear complex. In the information age, it consists of a targeted one via the internet and a generalized one via the legacy media. This is why war had to return post 9/11, for it is the one unifying thing the managerial class know both populations fear and support. If it stopped there, it won't reach here, is the tired old boomer mindset invoking World War II. So all foreign wars become wars for protection of the homeland and its greater values. This is the through line in Ukraine and the attempted through line in Israel. The narrative of fight Hamas in Gaza to stop them from conquering New York isn't exactly resonating. Hence the invocation of somewhere like Iran, an eternal boogeyman. The sea of worry must be kept full at all times. At the time this was written, looming election and the ratcheting up of geopolitical doomsaying has caused a phenomenon that fills me with worry. Being asked about politics in social and family situations offline. People talk to me in hushed tones about looming, immediate disasters they have been told about. There is anxiety because media and social media have made these events real. Despite me and hopefully you knowing that visible politics is akin to pro wrestling, it is kayfabe. It is in those moments that I realize, despite being a political weirdo attempting to create a revolutionary right-wing framework of ideas, I am far less afraid than the mass. I do not fear climate disaster. I do not worry about who to vote for. I do not fear being drafted into a war, and I don't fear dying in nuclear fire. This is because I know what is on the news is a story with a purpose. And what is in the news cycle can often tell us nothing. It is there to fill up mental space. Narrative news is a function of the news being a narrative. If it reads like fiction, then it probably is. That's the long and short of it. People differentiate mentally between the news cycle and fictional media because they think it helps them keep a grip on reality. But nothing could be further from the truth. In our stream Everyday Lies, we talk about in detail how even the most banal news, when you drill into it, is adjusted to fit a handful of narratives and reinforce them. Often the truth is far more banal than the headline would represent, functioning as an engine of regime-flavoured unreality to keep the endless conversation going. The news media represent themselves as a bulwark against online sensationalism, but this is an inversion. they must constantly create a narrative that has a sense of forward movement, even when nothing is happening. The regime must portray events in such a way that they seem interconnected narratively to the audience in a manner that makes sense to them and reinforces the common, greater values our societies are now supposedly based on. As Western populations get less homogenous and increasingly less Western, these narratives must be broadened and simplified to hit. This is why there are an increasingly limited number of plot lines all the news in the current moment must adhere to, and since 9/11, it is endless war that is the narrative backstop of choice. In a previous piece regarding the conflict in Yemen, I pointed out that the war had been going on pretty much continuously since 2014, and sporadically since 2011, a fact that is universally recognized if you look beyond the headlines. To most people, the conflict in Yemen did not exist until the news cycle made it exist to them. The reality on the ground did not change. But what did change was Western perception of the conflict, which is a gulf explained by the saturation level propaganda all modern managerial states subject their populations to. They can simply switch it on and off like a tap. Yemen became, for a brief moment, the current thing, purely as a function of the news cycle supporting American militaristic posturing in the region. The same is true of Israel and the geopolitical extended universe of the Iran conflict. American policy hawks have wet dreams about it. America is so horny for war with Iran, it makes you uncomfortable. It's ugly and perverse. The neocons are at full mast with the idea of missiles in the air pointed at their greatest ally. We know via the work of the Nudge Unit, who were the official social engineering team of David Cameron's government, that all language is deliberately and openly crafted to elicit certain responses to nudge you towards certain beliefs and actions. This is justified by these actions being good actions and these beliefs being good beliefs, and that the state would be remiss if they didn't socially engineer these outcomes as far as possible. This is an accepted tactic in the liberal conversation that is supposed to be public life. These nudges, of course, all coincidentally align with the aims and goals of the British security state. If the news cycle is making you paralysed with fear over a global war, and all messaging is explicitly and openly crafted, that's simply how the crafted narrative is supposed to make you feel. The message is less important than the messaging.